Alright guys, here we're going to talk about the movie Return to Oz. 1985's Return to Ozly. Had you seen it before?
Yes.
Of course you have.
This is one of my favorite movies.
Well, it's not for kids.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. It's one of those films your parents would be like, it's like the Dark Crystal effect. They'd be like, this is some shit for kids. Here you go, kid.
It's made by Disney.
Call me in 2 hours. And then you'd be like having like nightmares. You're like forever traumatized by
Pop
it.
black hole in. It's
wonderful.
Disney.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it will always have that legacy in it. I haven't rewatched it because I've been afraid. Well, what if I was just a kid and it's not a masterpiece? I'm here to confirm it is in fact a masterpiece. 10 out of 10. One of the most greatest films ever made for various reasons. I will accept no criticism. I don't know what you're gonna say.
It's just one of the strangest movies.
Yes.
Like, honestly, just. It doesn't make sense to even call it Return to Oz. Like I get that it literally is Return, but
We're going to Oz.
I don't. It's not necessarily related to the first one at all.
This sounds like table discussion, not counter discussion.
All right, guys. If you've seen it or don't care, false or spoilers. If not, pull out now.
If you need a place to rent content, you better listen. We're Cannibal Video and we eat the competition.
All right, so here we are for the spoilers of Return to Ozly. Let me hear them spoiler-filled thoughts.
I don't think you want me to start talking about this movie. I'm going to talk for so long. It's going to be so terrible. I'm going to do my best to reel it in. Someday I will make a 3-hour video essay about how great this movie is. But for now, I'm sure you have some bullshit to say about it.
Well, like, the things that jump out to me are that some things look so much better than other things throughout the movie. But mostly with a horrific twist. Like from the position of them, bringing together one of their characters like to life out of just furniture and a previously living creature that has its memories of when it was alive.
And he takes it in stride. He just
really
like,
does.
This is a lot weirder than the last time I was alive.
You picture like a RoboCop scenario where he shoots himself in the brain. Like, I'm not meant to be.
Once he falls apart, he's just
Yeah.
like, well.
Well, and that's like such a horrifying thing too. Like you're cobbled together poorly, and you have the ability to move, so potentially the feeling. So when they fall apart, what does that even mean?
His little legs are like moving and stuff. Yeah, no, I mean it's obviously magic, but it's obviously horrible. And everything that's sort of, if you could put a tagline on the back on the box, it's obviously all magic. ... but it's all horrible. Like I think that's a perfect.
No, it's a weird thing because like you have like Jack, the pumpkin king or whatever the hell he's called.
Mom, my real mom.
And like
Pumpkin
he
Man.
is interesting looking, but in such a weird way.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to like your actual Scarecrow, who's still alive, like from the first one. And he looks like a weird, like, oh, okay, so it's like when you have a Ninja Turtles stage play, like like nothing moves on him, there's no emoting.
Where's TikTok?
We never found him.
The Lion and the old Tin Man and those things, like I think they made a conscious effort to have the old ones be like illustrations from a kid's book, and to have the new ones, like when she's winding up TikTok and like the cobwebs are like wrapping around. I have these vivid childhood memories of certain frames of this movie and just like turning it and them wrapping around the little thing. I was like, oh, it's so dirty.
The fine print on him sucks though. Like guaranteed to run for 1,000 years. It like doesn't mean continuously. It means like in its whole lifetime. Like it's a weird thing to write. Like why
1,000 years of it being wound.
Of constant care and maintenance.
Guaranteed to work perfectly for 1,000 years.
Oh, you don't believe that, do you?
I mean, what are you gonna do?
Well, because you get this first thought, because like you're now coming back to Oz. You're like, oh, time moves differently here.
It must, right?
Which it literally has to,
just
for anything to make sense.
It's been 6 months on Earth, so it's been like whatever.
But so you're like, okay, so like oh, it guaranteed to run for 1,000 years. Is that telling me it's been 1,000 years?
Yeah.
Oh my God! And then you see how quickly he runs out. You're like, it might have been 6 minutes. Like
there were people to wind him when they were actively fighting and stuff.
You'd hope.
And I love that he has like a title, right? Like
he's the Army of Oz.
The Army of Oz.
The Royal Army of Oz.
Army? It's just a bunch of old junk. Like the copper kettle in the yard back home.
They're like, oh shit, son, yeah.
And he has almost no mobility whatsoever.
Yeah. He takes care of the Wheelers.
Come here.
He does.
It
doesn't move.
It's all about picking the right tool for the job.
The Wheelers are like a weird, like, Zoobly Zoo enemy. Like, you're like, what the fuck are these things?
Who?
I have something that doesn't make sense to what I'm referencing.
Zaboomafoo?
Zaboomafoo is different.
Hi, great to see you.
I don't know what that is either, because I'm old. No, the Wheelers, okay, so like here we must take a moment to talk about this idea of like, we have the Oz formula, and you were there, etc., right? And they take that and they twist it and turn it into this thing. Those are the orderlies who are pushing the like carts around and like the little wheels are squeaking and stuff.
You won't need that.
And now they're these terrifying, these like freakish dudes or whatever.
You have to come out sooner or later, and when you do, we'll tear you into little pieces.
It's a perfect, more perfect, I would argue, than the original Wizard of Oz vision of like how these little things would scare a child and how she would build them up into these monsters in her mind.
I think that this is like, I don't know what year the different things came out though.
Yeah.
So like if you've seen The Wiz, a lot of these things feel like a weirder version, like, oh, we're going to try to make this version of that with the whatever.
It's definitely going into, I think, some of the original Wizard of Oz or the other books or something,
I think
right?
it's
digging into some of the fiction, I'm sure. They didn't just make all this up for the movie.
Also,
right?
my theory that I've not done any fact checking on is that, like, this is not based on the original movie at all.
Yeah.
It's solely just the books, and I wonder if the Return to Oz book is just this.
I would assume. I mean, I haven't looked it up either, but yeah, that was always my assumption. Was someone was just like, we're doing another installment in the chapter of like the next chapter in the installments of the Oz.
I hadn't rewatched
saga.
this in quite some time, and if you were to ask me, like, what is it about? I would have said, oh, it's years later, and Dorothy's daughter is now pulled into the thing. Like for some reason that was in my head, and I think it's because of how young Fruza
Yeah, you're
Balk
really hung
is.
up on this. It's very interesting.
Well, because it makes it's so weird, because like many times it's like, who is this for? And having her be extremely young, and how many traumatic things happen to this young child.
Rid of all those bad waking dreams that you've been telling me about.
It's about them going to take her to get electroshock therapy because she's like delusional and doesn't sleep at night because of this mystery land.
That's our thing that we're always saying is, oh, the movie ends and it's like a happy ending, and it's like this bitch is traumatized forever. You're gonna have PTSD. She can't sleep. She's having like night terrors, but it's the year 1899 and they're about to party like it is. So they have to take her into some institution where they strap her down and they're gonna give her electroshock. That like the medical terror of this, the horror.
Yeah, no.
This is a horror movie, and he's trying to be like, oh, look, and there's its mouth. See, it's a friendly machine that will like destroy your brain to the point where you're like docile enough for your parents to be happy. Like
those headphones.
Terrifying. Yeah, those like metal things. They're gonna like put current through your brain.
No, it's crazy. And like she's meeting with a psychiatrist to try to decipher these problems, and like she's a little too on point for me, where I'd be like, as a psychiatrist, at what point you're like, she's really answering my questions to a level of detail quickly that I'm like,
oh, no.
Do I go, maybe you have been to a fictitious land?
No. He's just like, it is the kids who are wrong.
Yeah,
No.
Well, I mean, me personally, like what would, if I ask someone questions and they can very quickly, like certain times you're like, oh, you're just bullshitting me. But some of these I'm like, there's a level of attention here.
How did that work?
You put them on, and you click the heels 3 times. And then you said, there's no place like home.
From a small child.
That's
that I'm
because
like,
we live in a world with magic in it, where we desperately want there to be mutant powers, alien visitations, or ghosts, or whatever. Yeah. So we would. That's why we're not the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist is like, she's the like worst case I've ever seen. And once my contraption cures her, I'll be famous. Like he goes down this road and decides, yeah, I'm doing it harder. I'm cranking it up. Fuck you, right?
I am not the thief.
Dorothy!
Scarecrow!
Yeah, that multi-faced bitch. Which
the heads are so fucking...
That's also another very creepy thing for children.
Extreme, like... part of me was like, okay, this is not as scary as I thought it was, as a kid, because I remember various scenes like getting to me. And then when she steals the powder of life and she's running down the hall and every head that was sleeping has woken up. And they all have spotlights on them, and they're all screaming. All these heads just screaming as she's running by. I was like, okay, this is pretty weird. I don't like this.
That made me question a lot of the things.
I'm extremely uncomfortable.
Up to that point. Yeah. So, like, if all the heads have some sort of a hive mind, or even the head not on the body can recall other things, because that wasn't the head she was wearing when these happened. Earlier, our boy Pumpkinhead, he's like, oh, she was wearing head number 22. She probably forgot I was up here.
She threw me in this corner and said she was going to make a pie out of me. But she was wearing head 22 at the time and must not have worn it since because she hasn't remembered I'm up here.
I hasn't worn that head in a while, and I was like, oh, that's interesting if the knowledge is based on the head you're wearing. But then I was like, well, why would you ever switch heads? How would you, like, are you summing up what happened? Like, how does that work? And then it doesn't. It's just something he said because he's an empty-headed pumpkin man.
Well, yeah, he might be wrong. Also,
yeah, I think that's what we have to assume.
Also, when she walks down, she's explaining what's happening, and the heads are awake. They can see what's happening. So, like, they know what's happening.
When they are awake, I'm like, what is happening there? That's such a weird thing because they are heads off of are heads off of other people that we know to be true, and like we know when you just magically life heads, they can retain their knowledge potentially.
Oh no, I think this is a different spell. That's like
something.
She's because she says like I'm going to lock you in the tower and ripen you up and then take your head too.
I believe I'll lock you in the tower for a few years till your head is ready. And then I'll take it.
Yeah. Because she's like, they're her heads now. But yes, they must have separate brains and stuff.
Something has to be happening.
But like that thought-provoking thing, I know you're just getting close to like a nitpick, but like as a child to have that thing of like, how do the heads work?
Yeah.
Like this amazing like window into the magic world. More effectively.
Why put them all in one hallway when you could put them all around the castle and you'd know what things are happening everywhere? The castle, very interesting.
That's her hall of heads. Yeah,
I understand.
Oh, I love the castle. Oh my god.
There's like dusty floors that like fucking like TikTok's like legs are adding the dust to move and stuff.
This is okay. The first Wizard of Oz was made in 1903. Okay, it's so fucking old.
Yeah.
And yet there's so much in it that you're like, wow, okay, that's the thing or whatever. This movie is like 85, whatever we said, and like they've come such a long way, but we're still not like throughout the movie. I started to imagine like, oh, if they made this today, it'd be like. Instead of just seeing the other girl's reflection, it would be like, boom, this like CG bullshit. It would be this gross where you're like, oh, I hate this. Or they would show her. They wouldn't just cut back to like the other girl, Ozma, just like, oh, she's gone. I didn't hear the door. And then I open the door and I don't see her. And you're like, well, what was that? No, they would show her like, like disappearing through a little portal. And you'd be like, you're ruining it. You're sucking. But yes, stuff like that. The dirt, the grime, the fact that it's this real set. There's so many mirrors. I just pictured like people on like ladders with like silver paint, just painting, just painting this whole place because you see it way at the end. And now it's a super wide shot. It's full of people. They're all nightmares in some way. Everything's shiny again. They've shined up TikTok. They've shined up the Tin Man. Everyone's fucking around. I'm like, holy shit!
I was wondering how they shot that shot. If there's multiple mirrors and like they're shooting this mirror into that mirror to get the reflection on that thing.
The floor is another mirror. It's insane. It's this, and it's huge.
Craziness.
You're like, wow, what's happening?
There's a weird fucking chicken, a lot of claymation rocks and shit. Like,
well, the chicken is an animatronic, I think, at some point, right?
Yeah, it's a half and half. It's like
she's holding it, right?
Yeah, it's like the dog in Labyrinth plays. Like, oh, sometimes it's the dog, sometimes it's not. Like,
it's one of those or whatever. Yeah. Absolutely.
It does seem like it does react well in a lot of scenes, like when it's actually a chicken. Like, it's like, okay, I need you to fly into there. I guess we just put some things. Oh, he's pecking the key. Like, I'm like, chickens not known for their stage presence and ability to do things. I'm like, no, okay, I like that.
10 out of 10 chicken. I agree. It's
a little strange just to fit, I think, the narrative of like, we'll make eggs be poison. It'll be great.
Yeah.
To like, ditch Toto. Maybe chickens are the new dogs. They're easier to train. Man's best friend.
I love it though. It's great. Listen, the whole arc of like the chicken, and they start to talk about it like a chicken, and you're like, wait, what? That doesn't mean anything to the audience yet. And
what about the chicken?
There's no sign of the chicken.
and then seeing how, you know, the end. And it has that vibe of like the epic fable destiny thing, where everything had to come together just so. Everyone had to do their parts in the exact way for this to turn out the way that it turned out. To get, Beatrice, whatever, is that Gonzo's chicken's name? Whatever. The chicken in this, right?
Clarissa, I think, is Gonzo's chicken.
Clarissa! No, she explains it all.
Something.
Claretta! Okay, but to get...
Camilla, yeah.
Ms. Marvel chicken.
Love at first cycle, you set me spinning, if you know what I mean.
To get, Jack, up, he's like eating them. He eats Gump.
Yeah.
He just literally, eats them. They're literally being consumed and killed. You see down his throat the craggy stuff with like the fire on the bottom, and then he goes to eat Jack, and just little egg pops out. It's this perfect, and the look on his face, the true terror on the Gnome King's face when he realizes what's happened and that he's dead now, and he melts into a skeleton and shit. 10 out of 10. Sorry.
I wonder why he even wants to be human. He seems so much more powerful than a human would be.
He would be powerful and be the Gnome King then.
Do you think the power comes, do you think more power comes from being a human?
I think that he's undergoing a transformation that will make him more powerful than you could ever possibly imagine.
It is fun seeing the cutback as he gets more human.
He turns more human, right?
I do like that.
Which means he, he's no longer claymation, now he's a guy. Yeah. And then it's like, the guy has less makeup on. You can see.
Soon, there'll be no one left who remembers Oz.
His eyes and his little like where the makeup ends and shit. Oh my god, it's a guy. And he even says, "Why? Once she finishes her thing, I'll be fully human and my power." And he's wearing the slippers. He has the fucking this
That
reveal.
is such a goofy thing when he lifts up his little skirt. He's like, "I am wearing your shoes, little girl."
And he's like, "Thank you. You dropped these, and I used them to take over, the Emerald City or whatever." Yeah. And then you see Adebisi's there. I'm like, "How did he let this happen?"
Jack gets turned.
Yeah, there's
and she's in Jack's head. So I would expect a little extra magic or her to pop out or something when he turned into a thing. I liked all the things they turned into. They all seem to embody
objects,
them in a little bit. Like, you're like, okay, the couch creature turned into like a tchotchke.
Green. It's green. It's green. Dorothy. Green.
Oh, it's you, the ghost!
Yeah.
The empty-headed pumpkin guy turned into a vase.
Dorothy. It's green.
Jack!
Our warrior is a metal.
Go on. Touch it. Dorothy.
Yeah, you can kind of tell what they're gonna be before they whatever. Yeah. It's pretty.
I like that. It was deep.
It's pretty good. Yeah. And this too, this whole sequence is bookended with a bunch of amazing, the hands and the goatsy hole in the wall opening up with all the little claymation hands. He's like, oh, we'll give you some treats, and it's like cakes and drinks and stuff, and they're bubbling, and he's like,
what is it?
Limestone pie and hot melted silver.
Molten silver, and you're like, and they're like, okay, fuck, never mind. Yes.
I thought our robot boy would be like, hell yeah.
He'd be like, this is the shit.
Get some of that.
This is the shit.
He gets all chromed out at his Star Wars coronation thing.
Oh my god,
I was
he's about to get Chewbacca's
boy,
medal. Exactly. Perfect. At the end, when they're all like, na 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 na.
How are you? I wish I wasn't tied to the bed.
I wish I wasn't tied to the bed. There's a lot of lines like that.
That might be the only one I wrote down, honestly.
Hello, Dorothy. How are you?
I wish I wasn't tied down.
Nothing to worry about.
I did think it was strange as to how close she was in this journey. So the first Wizard of Oz, from where the house lands, getting to Oz, is like a fucking movie. Yeah. And in this one, she's like, oh, we're gonna go to Oz. There we go. And it was like 2 feet away. The road was very cool though. That bucked, fucked up road. That probably took a lot of work.
Picking up a brick and being like, you don't understand. This was a yellow brick road, and then the audience is like, oh my god, and it's just this crap, right? This pile of shit, and you're like, wow. all like overgrown and long, right? A lot of it.
Eventually they're cheating it by like filming like through the grass, you can't see what she's on. But for enough, I was like, those are all bricks. That is like so many sets.
No. That's a lot of the movie too, is where it's like, wait, they had to build that. That's real. Those archers are real. That shit is real. It's not like, oh, after a certain point, and sometimes it is. You're like, oh, that's a matte painting. That isn't like she's not like in the ocean, like it's a thing or whatever. But yeah, a lot of it, you're like, no, they had to build enough to do that. That's a lot. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
like, that's a bunch of shit.
Or even just like throwing little kids into the water. Like I'm like,
oh
okay,
my
that
God.
looks like a river. I don't know, like how much you're faking that in the early '90s, like or '80s.
No, that scene too made me feel, because like now I'm like cursed to think of like the Netflix original version of that, where like someone's in the woods, but like every show for the last 20 years has used the same little woods area. And this, when they turn the corner, when the camera turns the corner, and you're like, no, they're going down the riverbank. They're all muddy because they fell.
Stop!
The branch is breaking. The headmistress is like screaming. There's rain pelting them. You're like, this is really happening, you guys. This is amazing.
Yeah, they could have died there.
Yeah, it felt like they could have. And now I'm like, no wonder as a kid I was like, oh, because as I've grown up, everything has gotten weaker too. Where I'm like, I'm not scared of this.
Yeah,
the chick from Frozen's gonna be fine.
As part of the childhood trauma, the Wheeler's like mask, like face, that's horrifying. But
come here.
Them,
when they come
like
up,
when you finally see what the desert of fucking death or whatever it's called, or non-existence, whatever the fuck that shit's called, and like the guy falls into it, like turns to sand. You're like, oh shit,
bro.
Okay. At any moment, Dorothy could have fallen into that fucking thing and actually died.
She was wearing like these like flat-bottomed shitty shoes, like made of cardboard or wood or something. Those old shitty shoes, and just hopping from rock to rock. Like, it's okay. And yes, one slip off of one of those little rocks. Yeah, you fucking see, and it has like like the helmet, and then you see it crumble a little, and you're like, oh, it's real. He's not coming back. Put him back. Oh God. Like yes, that's like the finality of death, even of the Gnome King and even of his like rocky dudes. You're like, okay, like people really die in this movie. This is not fake anymore.
I love the Gnome King's like rocky minions, like how they just pop up and they're doing their business. Like those look really cool too.
In the finale, when it's like a bunch of like rock demons coming out and like
not so much
the
just like faces appearing, but the actual full-bodied one is very.
I liked
cool.
the full screen face where they keep cutting to his like one minion being like they
Now she is on our mountain with a small army.
She is more powerful than I thought.
Dorothy's outside and she has an army, and you're like, what? Oh, like this other
she has
perspective.
a chicken.
A chicken.
She has a chicken with her.
Like when he popped up over his shoulder, like real small. I was like, what's up? It's like whispering in his ear.
The army of.
I always meant to read the books, but I never did.
That's fake.
Because I always heard they were like they're more like this, like they're dark, twisted fucking things.
That's what I wanted this whole time, apparently.
Like I think the Tin Woodsman like actually like murders motherfuckers and shit.
Oh,
his backstory is
in
deep.
this where they're like, oh, the witch enchanted his axe, so he would cut his own limbs off until he was all tin.
The witch enchanted his axe, and he kept on cutting off all the other parts of his body until he was all made of tin. Even his head was.
That's all right, Dorothy.
And you're like, what the fuck? That's a serious retcon that makes this seriously upsetting. Fuck.
Well, I think it's the opposite. I think that they retconned it for the movie, and all that shit is like it's a horrible thing.
Either way, it's like, what? Yeah, which is why I'm glad that shrieking madman was stoned for most of the movie.
I think it's a little insulting to keep calling him the Cowardly Lion.
Right.
Especially after he proved he was brave himself? In the first one.
Yeah. They barely give him a second of screen time.
He looks cool though.
Which is awesome.
He looks like
he's
some sort of BBC version of Aslan or something.
I was just gonna say he's a little more of a Narnia lion in that, right? A little more whatever.
Which I kind of like.
Yeah. No, if you have to pick a thing.
Yeah.
No, I think everybody was more or less okay. I love a line, Pumpkinhead Jack or whatever. They're like Dorothy's asking him some sort of question, like, well, what happened? Don't you remember? And he's like, I wasn't alive yet. And you're like, okay, I guess that'll do it.
There must have been some magic words.
What were they? Think.
Think?
You've got to remember.
I wasn't alive then. How can I remember?
That's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. What words did she say to bring you into existence? I have no idea.
I don't know these words. words.
Read them anyway.
Weog, Teog, Peog.
Peog?
So there's an element here too where like the Gnome King makes a very interesting case that like, well, all those emeralds belong to me and all that stuff, which I remember as a kid being like, oh, the world is so much more complicated than I thought.
I was just taking that. What was mine?
I'm just going to ignore this for 20 years and hope it never comes back.
Well, I think his point is valid,
It's interesting.
but he's punishing the wrong person, because the people he's punishing aren't the ones that took it. They just moved into a castle that he had. Like,
yes, but it's interesting that like we had to add this element of like, well, he has a valid claim to doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's not just a madman, a bad man, right? He's like, those are my minerals. I had the mineral rights, and you came in, you stepped on them.
when you first hear like the Gnome King, that's not what you're picturing.
Petrified polymorphs.
No.
Like, I'm like, oh, is that a gnome?
No, but I like that, honestly.
Oh, no, I loved it.
Cool. Okay.
I think I would have named it something differently, but obviously, in this world, a gnome could be whatever you want. Like, there are no real gnomes, so who am I, high and mighty, to tell you what a gnome looks like?
I consciously remember that being an angle where I was like, as a kid, like, you start to categorize. Well, that's a goblin, that's an ogre, that's
I knew David and that was the gnome for me.
Farewell, my dear David, my husband, my love.
Farewell, my beloved. I thank you for all the love you've given me.
So you would have a gnome in mind. And then I remember this like rocking my world, like, wait, because it was one of the major things where it's like, oh, elves aren't the same in that. I thought there was one elf and everyone was had agreed on like what an elf was. Now it's this. So yeah, when they say the gnome, it's like, all my gnomes that mine the minerals and stuff, goes on a big rant.
All made for me. By my nose.
Something weird. In my head, so we talked about like remembering stuff and it being consistent or not. In my head, the first head that Mumby had was Auntie M, and then she switched to be the head nurse or whatever. And I thought it was going to be this brilliant thing where like, oh, the like maternal figure in her life, the authority figure, switches from this person playing her lute and being like, I don't really care, but we gotta whatever, to like this evil person who's like, I've got you now, and stuff like that.
I'm Dorothy Gale.
Dorothy Gale.
What's happened to the scarecrow?
Come nearer to me.
And I think it might almost have been that by accident, because the first one looks more like Auntie M, but it's not her, I think. And
looks too young, I think. But maybe not.
Well, and Dorothy would have said, Auntie M, is that you? Like, it doesn't make sense for that to be the thing. But I like that better, and I think that there's a vibe, if not an actual thing there. But I dig.
Yeah. I thought the whole choosing of heads things were like...
You're not a head guy?
Well, I just don't physically understand it. Because... if you're choosing one that's like, oh, I want to be a prettier one or something, I'm like, okay, that'll be the head you use forever. Like, why would you like? And then when she's like, oh, it's that spell is locked in numbered whatever
31
with her original head. You're like, oh, you have to do something to the original head to stop her. Like that's where your mind goes.
Yeah.
But no.
No, it's just that is the other actress or whatever it's going to be and stuff. Yeah, I know. It's a little, I think variety is the spice of life.
Sure.
A head for every occasion.
When she like drops out of the sky, like it's just like, it'll be fine. It's not your fault, Jack.
No. It's all right, Jack. It can't be helped now.
This movie deserves like a fucking video essay. On the way down, he apologizes, and she's like, it's cool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mom.
Then she goes, and just lands on as if it's a... It's so good.
But then like 1 second later, she falls again into the depths of the earth, and you're like, oh, all she does is fall.
Because the Gnome King. Oh God, and those tunnels. Those are the tunnels from Super Mario the movie that Mario goes through. Those are the it's the same tunnel Spawn goes through. We gotta find this tunnel. It's out there.
Spawn was actually fighting gnomes.
It links the worlds. Yes, the Gnome King is in there. You thought that was...
These are tunnels in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, right. No.
Two.
The devil or whatever with the big stupid horns. No, that was just the
Annihilator.
That was the Gnome King reincarnated.
I believe that could be true.
You have so much. You have so much.
But that is not the point.
I had to pee.
Are we done? We'll have to pee, so we're done.
Alright guys, thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought about it. Don't die in a fire, and we'll see you next time.
If you want to support the show, head over to cannibalvideo.com, pick up some merch.
And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's something.
Whatever.
Fuck these motherfuckers.
Cannibal Video has everything you need. A wide array of VHS and DVDs. We ate the competition, now it's only us. Our expert staff opinion